So a couple of days ago, we saw something incredible happen. And that was the Northern Ireland Secretary appointed by Liz Truss, who herself is responsible for the current bill of, say, the Northern Ireland Protocol Bill passing through Parliament, which, if it was triggered, would probably kick off a massive trade war with the EU, has now come out and said, so yeah, we've got this moment. We think we can negotiate. I want to make sure that power sharing gets re-sorted out, but as we've said before, the DUP aren't going to be too happy about that because they are quite happy just to start crisis after crisis and, damn everything else. So watch out for them, certainly on this. But the fact that we are seeing this softening of the language towards the EU has been incredibly extraordinary. Because you have to ask the question, why? And even though you can see this going on, why is this happening? What is going on to cause this? And I think it generally is the actual reaction that a lot of Tories are coming to the conclusion, even other Brexiteers, which is why we have seen infighting between Brexiteers arguing about what Brexit itself actually means. Because you can use slogans only for so long, but even when your own side is coming to you asking what was the point of Brexit, even now, you have serious problems. And I think we are starting to see the softening of of Brexit itself. And I think that we put out today, was Boris Johnson the last chance for Brexit? Is Liz Truss's government currently probably full of Brexit ultras themselves, hoping that they can somehow just sweep Brexit under the rug for good? And to be honest, they can't. Even with this softening of the language, people are going to catch on. People are going to realize just what damage Brexit well and truly did to this country. And we are seeing it of article after article, just showing and explaining from economists saying this is the damage that Brexit has done. So before we go into today's article on this, please do remember to hit that like, share, and subscribe button. And of course, down below, there are links to my Patreon page and a one-off donation link called Buy Me Coffee, where you can, buy me coffee. And as always, thank you very much to all those people who do help and support the channel that way. And of course, down below, there is the YouTube thank you button. And of course, the YouTube subscription button called the Pony Club, where you can join that and you get badges, emojis, and whatnot, which does help also support the channel. So onwards we go. So this comes from the EU, or the EU Observer, the title of "No Tories are now defending Brexit, and Truss is noticing." So the visit by the new UK Prime Minister Liz Truss to Prague last week to take part in the French President Emmanuel Macron's European Political Community launch meeting was very important. After 6 years of English right-wing politicians and journalists pitting scorn at France and especially Macron, it was quite the U-turn, and Brexit conservatives have devoted a great deal of energy attacking Macron and even rubbishing France. This long tradition of the British isolationism that sees France as a rival and foe for being number one nation in Europe for the last 150 years. And France was perceived as the pinnacle counterforce to Brexit. But the mood in London and the ruling political, financial, and even opinion-forming circles is that the steam is going out of the Brexit balloon. Brexit is now seen as a bore, replete with negatives for the economy, scientific, and even civil society. And it is impossible to find a minister who will defend Brexit. Boris Johnson claimed that his election win in 2019 was because the nation rallied to his slogan of "Get Brexit Done." And we have to ask, what is really going on and why? And I think that comes to the crux of it, that the steam is going out of the Brexit balloon. And we said this months ago, years ago. You can only keep the balloon of Brexit inflated with hot air for so long. You cannot hide the damage that Brexit is doing to the economy, the scientific, and even civil society. You cannot hide that forever. It is just impossible to do. It doesn't matter how many times Boris Johnson will go, "We got Brexit done." Even Liz Truss at her big conference speech said, "We're the party that got Brexit done." Well, if you've been following Brexit, you know Brexit is far from done. That is why we started this video opening on the very fact that the Northern Ireland situation is still there, is still very, very much a problem. And as well, with the Northern Ireland Protocol Bill passing through Parliament, that will also reopen Brexit wounds as well. So, the opposition leader, Sir Keir Starmer, has rejected all radicalism and just offers a more sensible, centrist management of the nation's affairs than the oddball Tory MPs who would fit comfortably into American politics as ultra Trump enthusiasts. But Starmer prefers not to talk about Europe. He does not criticise any aspect of Brexit, despite its dire impact on the British economy, which is forecast to shrink by at least 4% as British firms have stopped trading with local markets across the Channel. If the post-Johnson Tories and Labour MPs, hopeful that their turn in power may come in 2024 after 14 long years of Conservative rule that may have seen the UK economy rarely get out of second gear, this silence suits business as much as the population who prefer to just bury their heads in the sand and just avoid discussing Brexit. There is a complete code of omerta in business outfits like the Confederation of British Industry or even the British Chambers of Commerce, as well as the City of London, and even big foreign owned companies on talk about the negative impacts of businesses from Brexit. Try reading all the CBI media releases from 2022, and not one was on Brexit, despite the huge damage in different ways it is causing to UK businesses. Yet, the latest opinion polls, based in interviews with over 17,000 people, shows that Labour winning 471 seats and Conservatives 85, Liberal Democrats 18. This would give Labour an overwhelming majority without the need to form any alliance with the Scottish National Party. It would also be a decisive rejection of Johnson and his hard Brexit. A poll today is not the same as a vote is 2 years ago. But time, I think that Liz Truss, who was a clear Remainer and knew what in the Commons what she was voting for against Brexit in 2016, now knows that the Johnson lies and damage against Europe can no longer pull in voters. After other recent polls have shown that 46% prefer for rejoin and 36% continuing with Brexit, there is no likelihood of a referendum on Europe in any time in the near future. But like the prohibition in the US in the 1920s, those who were willing to say in the 2016 that the vote was good for Britain and its citizens are indeed hard to find. And we cannot help but draw conclusions because the Iraq War was very same. Go back to the beginning of the Iraq War. It was easy to find someone who was in favor of the Iraq War. After the Iraq War, it is almost impossible. But given the opinion polls at the time, it should be easy. You should be able to sort of swing a cat and hit someone who was in favor of the Iraq War. You can't find them now. It is going the exact same way. Starmer has come up with his version of Johnson's Get Brexit Done. The Labour version is Make Brexit Work, but whatever that means. But Starmer still insists on the fact of the flat no to the customs union in the single market, or even allowing British citizens to live, work, or even retire elsewhere in Europe on the same basis as all other citizens of European nations. At the Labour conference in Liverpool at the end of September, a Labour spokesperson on Europe was still saying no to the EU. So what are our prospects of rejoining? Because they are actually very good, to be honest. Britain is a European country, and despite what a lot of people often say in my chat that you would be rejected, what politicians are actually saying that? There are no EU politicians flatly saying that. It is absolutely possible for us to redo. And for those of you saying, oh, well, you've changed too many rules, well, that would be very easy to do because we've done that before to change over to EU rules. It's not difficult to do. Will it take some time? Yes, but it is not impossible. So, however, there is a growing sense that the bulk of voters would like a more common sense and pragmatic, a more, quote, British approach. This is not about rejoining, though. There is a big rejoin march in the 22nd of October, but some change of tone in the relationship that lessens the damage to the UK. And I think that is what is going to happen. Starmer's version of Make Brexit Work does align with that, of doing more deals with the EU, doing more, sort of recognition of regulations and sort of certification and things like that. That is very much possible, I think. Truss's conversion to the Johnson hard Brexit line after 2016 was just about career and ambition, and boy, oh boy, was it. She knows she can win back some of the establishment support by toning down the anti-European hard line. Lord David Frost, the former diplomat who was taken up by Johnson and become a very outspoken critic on the EU, even briefly the minister in charge of Brexit, has been dumped out of the government by Truss. Other big mouth anti-European Brexit Johnson ministers have also been dumped by Team Truss. The Home Secretary, Suella Braverman, keeps making noises about foreign judges who stop the UK deportation refugees to Africa or everyone else without due process. But Braverman will get lost in the weeds with the Council of Europe and the European Convention and Court of Human Rights. Truss will not want to join Putin outside the European those outside of those conventions as well. She and King Charles III were a major high-profile Biden state visit next year. That won't happen unless she puts the Northern Ireland Protocol on a very low heat and stops Number 10 Downing Street acting as the voice of hardline Democratic Unionist Party. The EU Commission and Vice President Markus Silvak is making good noises about seeking the accommodation on the Northern Ireland Protocol through the Protestant identity of ultras, and Northern Ireland can always be relied on to try and mess things up. The obsessive anti-EU former culture minister, Nadine Dorries, now says that the UK should relay the Brexit hostility to freedom of movement and allow more EU telecommunications technicians into the UK to increase the broadband coverage in the UK. I mean, Jesus Christ. Here we are again agreeing with Nadine Dorries. What crazy world have we stumbled in upon? What did we just stumble across like an alternate universe and we just didn't realize it? Like, have we gone back into the the bacon sandwich verse? Is this it? We often talk about if Ed Miliband could have eaten correctly a bacon sandwich, we wouldn't be in this mess. Have we now somehow something very similar happened? Has Liz Truss metaphors about pies somehow catapulted us into an alternate universe where this is happening? This is why I say asking the question why is just as important. Why is this all happening? What is going on? What is going on behind the scenes? And of course, I think it is the realization that Brexit, first of all, has not only run out of steam, it is not going to sort of win you any more voters, but it is also going to start, I think, causing a lot of economic harm. Anyway, back to it. Meanwhile, Britain has simply not enough trained doctors, nurses, dentists, and many specialist technicians this century. Keeping out skilled Europeans does not make sense if Truss's proclaimed ambition to place growth at the heart of the UK policy is to be realised. It may seem counterintuitive after a terrible start, but Truss had with her Chancellor Kirsty Tang, but I do think that she will drop the Europhobic demagoguery and especially anti-France, anti-Macron rhetoric of UK politics in recent years. And we've seen that again with Prague. And Truss declared Macron to be a friend of her government and agreed that Paris and London should jointly take over the Sizewell C nuclear plant in a step up of cooperation in energy policy to combat illegal crossings in the Straits of Dover by the undocumented refugees and immigrants. Now that Truss has won Downing Street, she has no need of the fanatical anti-EU MP Tories. If they, or again the anti-EU press, do destroy her, that will keep the Tories out of power for more than a generation. Inch by inch, Britain is slowly reconnecting with Europe. And I agree. I agree with this 100% completely. But the question must be asked, why? Why is this going on? And I think you've got to look at just what's going on. You've got the energy crisis. The best way to solve the energy crisis is with a united European front. No country can really solve this problem by themselves completely. It will still be, somewhat of a problem, but a united European response is desirable. Look at what's going on in Ukraine. This has united Europe in a way that we haven't seen for quite a while. Look at the economic situation. All of the European countries having all bouncing back after sort of COVID, and even though there's the inflation and cost of living crisis are affecting other countries very differently, it's not overwhelmingly slowing their economy down like it is ours. And there is a realization, I think there really is a realization, what was the point of Brexit? Because we have a lot of Tory hardcore Brexit ultras surrounding Truss, saying that what she is doing with Kersey Katang is Brexit. That this is the promise of Brexit. Those exact same people who a couple of months ago under Johnson were saying that Johnson isn't Brexiting properly because they wanted him to do this and he wasn't going to do it. So there has been a very, very significant change in sort of Tory attitudes to Brexit, and this is something we have to keep an eye on because this could get very, very interesting if you really do get a situation where you've now got no Tories truly willing to defend Brexit. Then at that point, Brexit has more than just failed, as we always said it would. It never had any proper political policies. It didn't really have a foreign policy except saying no to Europe. But as we've seen, that policy and economically just does not work. The idea of reconnecting with the rest of the world, well, guess what? The world really isn't really interested in reconnecting with the UK because it's got practically next to nothing to offer to a lot of these countries. Take when we talked about Suella Braverman talking out against and speaking out against the Indian trade deal, something that a lot of Brexiteers back in 2016 were saying would be imminently achievable and would be absolutely fantastic for our economy. Same again for the US trade deal that they always talked up, that we'd get such a fantastic trade deal, it would make staying in the single market and customs union seem completely foolish. My, how times change.